Well, we talked about the soft bigotry of low expectations. We talked about the difference between equity and merit in social welfare programs. And that brought us to where we are today. So let's continue on, wrap up the idea of equity versus merit in the soft bigotry discussion, and then we'll move on to our legal issues next video. So, what is this all about? Critique of social welfare programs in context. It's about dependency versus empowerment. Dependency means that someone needs you or needs us in order to get along on a regular basis. That's a dependency. Our children are dependent on us. Social welfare programs make recipients of social welfare dependent on the government to get by from on a day-to-day basis, possibly indefinitely. There are people in social welfare programs that have been apart for years and will be for years to come. There was a period of time when I caused some trouble and I went a little bit crazy, and I lived in a community that was poorer community, and it happened to be a very ethnic, non-white community as well. And I was there for a few years, and had a pretty good time actually. But I learned something about the mentality of the people that were on social welfare programs, because they were everywhere around me. They would communicate with one another. They would work as hard as anybody that was working a full-time job, figuring out what the requirements, the tricks to getting that next benefit from the government. And they would manipulate all the facts of their lives, their family even, in order to attain those benefits. Right? Those benefits, those welfare programs, essentially caused them to be so dependent that they were willing to do whatever was necessary in order to maintain the stream of those benefits coming to them. That's a bit of a problem, don't you think? They could have been using that effort to better themselves or learn life skills, or go to school and get a degree, or some knowledge about something that they could use in a practical way to improve their lives, but they weren't. They were using that energy to, well, not have merit. They wanted that equity handout from the government, that social welfare, instead of anything that they would earn. The government essentially helped to set low expectations for these people, and these people, well, they were all about grabbing onto those lower expectations. Now, the people that I observed this in were mostly women, right? They were not bad women. They were good women. They were taking care of their children, and they were doing whatever they had to do to take care of their children. But they didn't have opportunity to improve their situation, well, because they were kind of tied to those children who, in their very young years, needed their attention 24 hours a day, and even in their kindergarten and preschool years, needed their attention 20 hours a day or 18 hours per day. And so they didn't really have opportunity to get out and get a separate job and get education, at least not that they could see, not that was available to their thinking. It wasn't obvious, open and obvious. So they were in this cycle. Now, the men in their lives, they could have helped, but the men in their lives wouldn't. The men in their lives were busy. They were busy committing crimes, or selling drugs, or doing whatever they had to do in order to stay non-responsible for the children that they had brought into the world. 4 or 5 children by 3 or 4 different women, right? The men were no longer a consideration. And the women recognized that even if those men did come back into their lives, it would not help them to get those social welfare benefits. So they didn't necessarily want to have that unified, conservative family structure, that structure that was good for them in years past, but is no longer good for them because as of the early 1960s, we've tried to create a new society where we can exalt and support the poor and to keep them that way, and the rich continue doing their own things. So accountability and opportunity, If there was some way to have social welfare programs that would hold people accountable, right? You will get this money so long as you apply for a job at these locations in the next month, for instance, tying the handouts, the social welfare handouts, to efforts to better themselves. That might have some merit. Still doesn't deal with all the variables that the social welfare people would have to have taken care of, like who's going to take care of their children while they're at work or while they're in school studying. So we perpetuate dependency, and that perpetuation of dependency goes from generation to generation. The mothers and the fathers, when they happen to be present, but they're usually not. Right? Broken families seems to be the single most obvious indicator of whether there's going to be a failure in the family, and failure of the children as they grow older into adults and fail to be anything other than dependence on social welfare programs themselves. Right? Broken families, it's a bad indicator. Reinforces stereotypes. We assume that if someone is on social welfare, that they're basically taking money that they did not earn. Well, it's a stereotype, to be sure, but it turns out that the stereotype is also true. That is the reality of things. It's possible, and I've seen it personally. It's possible for people to break out of that cycle, for that mother to actually get into the university, get into a study program, and end up with a criminal justice degree. I've seen that happen. And a woman that I observed very closely getting that done is an extraordinary success right now, because she has chosen against remaining part of that cycle of social welfare dependency. She broke out of that cycle and caused things to happen for her. Otherwise, the social welfare programs erodes the work ethic, the idea that merit is something that we should aspire to, that we should try to take care of ourselves rather than allowing someone else to take that responsibility for us, to tell us how to live our lives, what kinds of conditions that we have to meet in order to get those free dollars from the government. Attack upon law or policy based upon the idea of disparate impact. We talked about that last video. I won't get into that right now. Okay, this one's a little bit short, a little shorter than usual, but still about the right length. Actually, this is probably more accurate. I'll talk to you more. We'll get into the legal system and what it takes to prosecute and convict somebody. We'll get that done next video. Talk to you guys later.